Awesome. So thanks everyone for coming. These are our three alumni, and we're super honored to have them here. I'll let y'all introduce yourselves. Why don't we start with Kim?
Okay, hi. My name is Kim. I did FTC for 3 years and FRC for 2 years, and I'm currently double majoring in biomedical engineering and astrophysics on a full ride at Montana State University. And I'm also a member of the Mexica and Usabi tribes, and I'm currently mentoring an FTC team from the Apsalica Reservation in Montana.
Awesome, that's super inspirational. How about Delaney?
Hi, I've been with this for about 6 years. I started off on an FLC run by Carnegie Mellon University's FRC team, like as an every project. I did FLL with them FTC 1 year, a year later, and then was on Stage Robotics for my 4 years of high school. Currently, I'm another electrical engineering.
Super cool. And how about Rashad?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rashab. I've been doing FTC. I did FTC for 3 years, or 4 years, and FRC for 3 years. I'm currently in WPI, currently majoring in CS and minoring in RPE.
Awesome. So all these three alumni have amazing stories to share. And the way this is going to work is that I have a few questions, but it's mainly driven by what you want to hear. So does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask our alumni? Start. Great. So why did y'all join the first program? Before you go in any order.
I was kind of looking, this was like sophomore year of high school when I joined, and I was looking for a way to challenge myself and grow like in an intangible, right? Like grow through leadership and grow as in like working with others and, just learning outside of the classroom. And just some friends in my APCS class were like, hey, we're starting a robotics team at school. Want to join? And I was like, yeah, why not? So that's basically it for me.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar story myself when I just got a random phone call and like, cool, let's do it. Delaney, would you like to share?
Yeah. So it started actually like when my mom signed me up for a summer camp that Girls of Steel was running. And so like I was just gonna push into it. Some of you might be able to relate, but the important part here is that I really began to enjoy it and just like love discovering, new things, learning new things, and being able to apply that knowledge and see it play out, on the playing field. And so by the time high school rolled around when we moved to Bellevue, I was definitely looking for an FRC team because I knew how high quality the program first was. And so, yeah, I had 4 wonderful years aside from COVID. 4 years. So that's how I got into it.
Why did you join the first program?
So I joined in my 8th grade, so right before high school. I at that time had interest in I joined VEX for a year in my middle school. I was a little bit more mechanical based because they only had block programming that I was introduced to. But then when I was introduced to FTC, then I was like kind of forced to do Java programming and get into that field. And now I'm a CS major, so that really did help me a lot in changing the way I thought of programming. That it wasn't just block programming. It was more than just that. And I kind of stuck around with it even through high school, even in junior year and senior year, I was doing both FTC and FRC. So yeah, that's how I was introduced to it.
That's super fascinating. What made you switch from VEX to FIRST?
That is an interesting question. So my middle school, it was like a small middle school. Most of you may have heard North Star Middle School. So they only had 90 students. We had a bunch of VEX teams, but there were only like 2 or 3 students. And at that point, we only had like small robots that didn't do much. But that really made it less satisfying to like go to a competition and like you barely had anyone to like help you code this or build this. Like there was no outside of school time to build the robot because everything was in school. But then when FTC came, I was like, okay, this is like a little bit more. I have to engage with a lot of people because like you have 5 to 10 members or even 15, and then you have more than just a goal of you have to build a robot and compete. There's more like outreach like this, understanding more than just robotics and competition, and that made me stick with FIRST over VEX.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. All right. How did FIRST is playing into your current life and the current degree that you decided to pursue? How about Kim?
Okay, being at university and like being surrounded by an academic community, like it kind of gives, it's a great resource and great motivation to keep like pursuing projects and keep discovering and trying to help the community. That are like, yeah, just working on projects we're passionate about. So I'm always meeting like other professors and students and learning about their work, which is really inspiring, and like how they're trying to better the world and local community, obviously. And like cooperation, right? Like using them to, not using them, but like using their ideas to help improve on my own. One of my current projects right now that I started is like Tunsabi, which is one of our native languages. It's like a living dictionary app. It's focused on preserving our culture and our language by, you know, creating an online archive. And when I first came here, I was really adamant on working on my own because I was like, oh, nobody gets what I'm doing. Like, only I can do it. But then I kind of remembered that like the big first thing where it's like cooperation produces innovation. And I started reaching out to a lot of anthropology and like native studies professors here. And it's been really helpful, like having them guide me and help fund like this project and showing me all these opportunities and resources that I never would have like, you know, seen before. And I'm the first in my family to attend like higher learning. So this means like I've got all these opportunities to learn from like work with all these other people that have dedicated their lives doing this research and, you know, have the same goals as me as like trying to improve and impact our communities in any way that we can. So yeah, that's how FIRST is still being applied in my life.
That's super inspiring. Lainey, how about you?
Yeah, a lot of the skills that seeing, especially on FRC, sort of taught me, are definitely in terms of like teamwork and interacting with people and like conflict management. I think a lot of those lessons learned in high school and learned in on my FRC team definitely play out here because one thing that I really love here are like the student activities and clubs. And so like teams, I'm in a robotics club and just learning to work with people on, you know, a project like building a robot is not immediately easy, but the things that first taught me through just the experience of working with other people on like large scale projects definitely set me up well. And slight tangent is like the major that I chose, like computer engineering, that like directly came from, you know, the work that I did on my FRC team. In programming and like a little bit of electrical stuff. And so just the mentors and the older team members that like taught me a lot of like the content that I know now, also like really set me up.
That's like a really interesting point. Did first when you before you joined your FRC team, did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to do in the future? Did that change with your FRC team?
In terms of like choosing to join like the programming sub team or
Like what you wanted to do with your future, like as a career? How did first change that?
I think I like always imagined I would go into STEM. I think FRC was really just made me focus more or like find something to focus more on. So like science versus engineering, like once you get down to it, there is a pretty big difference. And so just like the hands-on learning helped a lot, or like mechanical versus electrical engineering. I think the problems that I was working on like more like were more electrical engineering slash even like computer science. And so I realized I enjoyed that over mechanical engineering. So like in FR or when I was on like FTC FLL, most of it was just like general engineering problem solving, but FRC definitely sort of spotlighted my affinity for like computer engineering specifically.
Wow, that's super cool. And I think I skipped over you, Rashab. How is FIRST being applied in your current life?
Yeah, so WPI is one of the first colleges that like introduced FIRST robotics. So they have incorporated like all the things that you learned, like Kim explained Coopertition. So like they have a bunch of like PBL courses here, which is project-based learning, engaging like students to like work with each other and like also kind of compete. So it's like robotics on a daily life kind of thing. So it has been like it's been like a good transition between like me taking FRC and FTC to attend this college. But in terms of my major, before joining FTC in 8th grade, I really didn't know what I was gonna do because that was like a bit early. So robotics definitely shaped up like I am now like really interested in CS. So that was the first thing I kind of focused on. And now after joining WPI, I'm almost done with my first year. I'm also trying to do RBE because I enjoy like building and working with people and teams and also compete and continue like this stuff I learned in first.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah, question. So how much time should I be like spending on FTC per week? And like, how did you guys learn how to like build a robot, and how much time did it like take?
Yeah, sure. Kim, would you like to start that off?
That's a great question. I don't know. I felt like even as a senior, like going into Worlds, like I was still learning how to build a robot. Like there really is like there's no limit on like when you finally know how to build something. When I started as a sophomore, like I knew nothing about coding, nothing about building, like never been exposed to engineering before in my life. So a lot of it was just kind of like going to meetings and then like having people, because usually, you have mentors, you have people around you that have some experience, and it's mostly just not being afraid to ask questions and not being afraid to like speak up. That's mostly how I learned. And it's just a lot of like taking initiative on your own. There's a lot of resources online. Like you could go on Onshape right now and there's a lot of tutorials. There's a lot of great CADing and like programming tutorials for free everywhere. And yeah, it's mostly just taking initiative to ask questions and like keep branching out and asking from all these like great people around you.
What can I do like off season to prepare for like the season?
Like any of y'all are, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think building on like Tim's earlier advice, asking questions was definitely like the main thing I did in like my freshman fall joining FRC. And so like advice on to like what to do in the off season. A lot of my FRC team did was outreach and stuff. So building like your soft skills, but also some advice would be like try to find like projects that would like benefit the team, help the team grow. Whether it's like building up infrastructure, like organizing things, or like working on an experimental project like a t-shirt cannon. That's what we had. Hopefully still have a few that we brought it to assemblies a few years ago. And that was something we got working like over the summer. So it still is that like hands-on trial and error sort of like learn as you do experience that you get like say during a build season. But like just for the summer. So yeah, that's like one of the best ways I found to.
Do you have any like specific resources that I can use to like learn like how to code and how to like do Onshape?
My like something that I did when I was trying to like work in the off season was I got like hand-me-down Arduinos and Raspberry Pi. Like you can probably get them from a teammate, or they're pretty cheap. And there's a lot of online tutorials that you can just learn how to code through that. Like I built my dog a automatic like dog feeder just using a bunch of PVC pipe, and I used Raspberry Pi for that. And there's a lot of like electronic stores in Bellevue as well, and just around town that you could just pick up like mini computers, and like I said, hundreds of online tutorials and like ideas on things you could just build. even if it's something small, just like, something small be. Trying to think. Maybe not a dog feeder, but like there are hundreds of ideas you could build.
And one last question. How big of a role did like FTC and FRC play in like college applications?
I want to say like 3 out of like 4 application essays were about first. Just because, and so that being said, when we get into like the college admissions, like sort of advice realm, I think a lot of people would caution you against, writing about the same thing because you fall into the trap of you could get repetitive, and so like you're not saying anything helpful for the other like 3 essays. On the flip side of that, I would argue that first is such a well-rounded and like multi-dimensional experience for a student, or it can be if like you put enough time and energy and investment into it. And the payoff for that investment is like you see so many different like types of experiences. You build like one sort of very elementary example is like outreach and engineering. You build like soft skills and technical skills. And in my opinion, there's just like a lot of nuance that you can get out of, 4 years of FRC. And I think I allowed James Robotics to really like play a big role in shaping like the trajectory that my academic took. But it can be different for.
So back to his original question, how much time commitment are we talking about? And what is the season? I'm not familiar with the schedule.
Just to repeat that a little bit louder. So, what do you think is like an appropriate time commitment, and how much time commitment did you put into robotics?
So in my our years are a little bit weird because in FRC, for me, I joined in sophomore year, so then junior year was remote, and then senior year there was no senior for me to actually ask questions. I had to become either a member still or mentor, and lead the freshmen who joined. So in terms of time commitment, I would say like for FTC, if there's like only 15 people, then you still, well, actually, if it's like 10 to 15 people, you still have to like pitch in and understand, like if you're into software or if you're into hardware and CAD, then you kind of have to on your own time, aside from like the team meetings, to understand the concepts and take those online like courses. Like Kim said, OnShape offers a lot of like tutorials and stuff, because during like the first year that you join, you're probably not gonna like be hands-on a lot, but you have to understand like how FTC works, because in the future years, if you're going to move on to FRC or stay with FTC, it's better to understand the tools, and then later on you can like innovate and come up with new designs that other teams didn't really have time to even comprehend or understand. And I feel like it's more feasible to like invest more time to understand stuff. So you might look at like a couple, I don't know. My schedule when I did FTC and FRC simultaneously in junior and senior year, I spent around like 13 or 14 hours per week during on season, which was a good amount of time outside of school. But yeah, you won't expect something like that if you're going to only focus on one program at a time.
And when is the season?
When's the season for FTC and FRC? So for FTC, it's from September to January, and then if you qualify for the World Championship, that's in April. And for FRC, the kickoff's around January, and then really similar, your competitions are in March. And if you qualify for World Championship, it's in April. But it's more of like the more time you put into it, the more you get out of it.
One more question. What do you think about hiring a mentor?
It depends. Like, do you like in what is your question specifically? Like, just need a mentor to understand something that you don't understand, or
Like, will it be useful in any way?
it will most definitely be useful. Just don't like rely on a mentor for like questions like how does this library work in like software, for example, because a mentor will understand like the basics of a language, for example, Java, but like you would only like need to ask them how to approach a problem more than what is the answer or what is the right way to do it, because the time that they spend on like understanding the stuff that first offers is like the same amount of time you're going to spend on what first offers and like how first works. So they won't be any different than you in that basis, but they will most definitely help you with understanding or introducing you to new methods of thinking or building or those kind of things. So if you need to like innovate on something and you already know the basis or the basics of that subject, then it would be most helpful.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, mentors are like there to like help guide you, and that's something First really wants you to reach out to mentors. It's part of some of the award criteria, but it's really about like you learning, so using them more of a resource instead of like having them do stuff and finding that balance. All right, more questions from the audience?
Okay, you guys all did FTC, right? So, wait, what's the ideal size for FTC team?
It's been a while since I have done FTC, but what I would say, since these are like smaller scale projects, I think it would be reasonable to say like big enough so that the workload isn't too much and that you can do things like outreach and engineering journal. And still also, you know, have enough people to build a really good robot. On the flip side, I think like not too many such that either the sort of like the tragedy of the commons happens where like you start kind of just losing people early on, but also not too many such that like communication gets because it is like a smaller project. So if you have too many people, it's kind of hard to like coordinate everybody, make sure you fit into everybody's schedules, making sure that like everybody has their ideas heard. So I think that's like sort of the limiting factor to how big a team can get. I want to say the team I was on was like somewhere between 10 and 20 people, maybe a little bit less than 10, but this was a really long time. So can job might have some better insights.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think we actually like had too many members. I think we had like 20 people sign up. I think it was like 12 or 15 only on a team, which definitely like was overwhelming sometimes, since you know previous years like there would really only be like 3 of us working on a robot and then 3 of us doing like awards and business, which back then like was really, it was overwhelming then too, because we're like, gosh, this is just not enough people to delegate everything to, and we just felt like we were working overtime. Like there were definitely times where we were putting in about 20 hours a week into, you know, being in the shop. But like honestly, now that I'm like looking back on it, if you've got like a good core like team, like a good team already established, I don't think you really can have too many members, since it really just it helped us build onto like this year's season, right? Now that I've graduated and things, like we were able to take a couple of members that were really experienced and they just got to mentor almost the entire season, and we were able to build a second robot and have like a lot of our newer members work hands-on with that directly, instead of it being like, oh, only the older members get to work on this robot and like get all of the actual experience since they already know what they're doing. So I don't think you can have too many members, you know, like I said, yeah, if you've got a good core, but definitely try to have more than like 6 or 7, just because there are so many small aspects that you forget about once you get into the season. And then you're like, oh gosh, we need someone to do this, but we're already focusing on like all of these projects. And then you're like, okay, it's the night before competition. Now everyone's got to stay up until 3 a.m. to get it done. So try to have like at least 7 or 8 probably. That'd be fun. But yeah,
Okay.
that's what I think.
Again,
Awesome.
So, can I ask another?
Of course.
So besides the time commitment, how much money do we need to contribute as parents?
This is just like how much you need to contribute. A huge component is like sponsorships and grants. So it really depends on like your team's funding capabilities. I know like some of you are from school teams and home teams. Do you have any advice on fundraising contributions?
A lot of our fundraising came from like, well, not a lot of it actually. Only a small amount came from like people's parents donating, as in like buying like certain parts for the team. But even though they were like already mentors, and then their families, or I think it was also like Microsoft has like a match program or something where they would just like match donations, and we got a lot of our funding through that. And then once we finally like were a big enough team, yeah, we had like 3 or 4 people just dedicated to reaching out to like a lot of companies, since there's a lot of engineering and like tech companies in just the surrounding area that are more than willing to donate like thousands of dollars to us. So I like personally, my parents only paid for the team fee, which was like $200, $250 a season, and that's all I had to do. But yeah, fundraising is like the biggest thing. We did a lot of school fundraisers as well, along with like asking the school district and like proposing all these grants to get us more money, because like a good majority of our kids couldn't afford the team fees. They couldn't afford the world championship or like certain events. So I think like probably half of our students were on scholarships. So yeah, fundraising's great. I've just reached out to companies. It's sometimes it really is as easy as that.
Awesome. What was one of your most important takeaways from the first program? Lady, why don't we start with you?
I think one of it is like one of the mottos for first is like the hardest fun you'll ever have. And I remember hearing that at kickoff of my freshman year. And because like in my FLL sort of experience, it was like I kind of got dragged into this. I don't really like Legos. This work looks hard. But there was such a shift between like going through FTC, working with a team, being a little bit more independent, and then, you know, like taking off in like FRC, where like I really got to see like I realized like these were things I wanted to learn more about, like how quadric encoders work, how to program them. And so like there was a lot of time that I put in, and like a lot of like solving difficult problems and talking with them about my other team, talking about them with my other team members. And so it did take a lot from me, but it was fun. And that's like what kept me going. Because I really do think that like you're not really going to get very far if you don't enjoy what you're doing. Um, and so first was a really good example of why that's true and like why that's what it made me work.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. How about Rashab or Kim? Would you like to share?
Yeah, so one of the main takeaways for me at least was before first, I was more of a shy person. So like group projects don't really suit me at all. I tend to work alone or not even communicate with anyone. But when I was forced to work in a team, not really forced, but when I was put into FTC, I kind of couldn't get anything done without talking to someone else on my team. Like there was no way for me to even like get the robot, build something, code something, make it work and run without engaging with someone else and getting it help with work with getting it working. So like overall, like from that year, 8th grade to 12th grade, I became like from a member that was shy and didn't really talk to anyone to like actually leading the team, the sub team, working with other sub team leaders, and join the drive team, and like making sure that everyone is also engaged and learning, so that when we graduate eventually, there's still someone to take care of the team, and they're not like just like relying on us to make the entire team work. So that is the main takeaway that I got from first for like 5 years in total. So yeah.
My biggest takeaway from first was something kind of similar to Delaney, but it was more of like just the value of failing, like having to sort of like reshape my way of thinking when it came to like, you know, putting countless of hours of work into designing, building, and like coding our robot just for it to DC mid-match at Worlds. And I'm like, oh wow. You know, like you want to get emotional, you want to get flustered, like that's like the initial reaction, but it's kind of learning how to step back and think of it as like okay, how do we, like, where do we go from here? Like, how do we build onto this? How do I work with my team, and how do we come up with a solution? You know, so even if it takes like building iteration after iteration, yeah, I learned that failure isn't really like the end of something. It's more of just the beginning of learning. That was my biggest takeaway.
Wow, that's really, really. All right. So what is something that you loved most about FIRST? Like what kept you in the program?
I think initially it was the people. Like I would be excited to go to robotics meetings on like Mondays and Fridays, just to see like the new people that I had started to make friends with. And so I think those bonds are what, are definitely another thing that like kept me coming back. And so like when things got difficult and when like there was a tough problem like to solve like in how to structure our code, that came up a lot. Um, like it was a discussion between friends on like how to achieve something, and so that created like a really good environment. And just getting more people interested as I got older, like watching them learn um, in similar ways that I had, and seeing that like achievement was one of the things that I really like.
Yeah, for me, like it was very difficult first year at least because like I didn't know that program that much, and also I didn't know the people I was working with. So like every now and then if I was like put into it like a hard task to complete, I would be like, this is way too difficult for me. But the only reason why I stuck into the program was because it was a good change from like having just focus in academics. Like this is using your like stuff you're learning in school, whether it be like math or English, and how to like utilize it in first. So like the fact that I was able to do that and like see some visual output, like Kim was talking about how like there was a lot of failure going on, but then you eventually reach success, and that's because you understood something that you learned from school maybe. Like there were several times where like a software bug that I couldn't figure out was eventually taught to me in school. So like stuff like that, and how I was like um, being able to use stuff that I learned and put it into the real world and see a visual output. That's the only reason why I stuck in first for 5 years.
Yeah, I've got pretty similar reasons to both of them. But the thing I definitely love most has to be the community. Like it is the most, I've met like some of the most amazing and brightest people that I know just by like going to robotics events. And even at university, like I'm still running into people, like I'll recognize a shirt and I'll be like, no way. And then I'll figure out like, oh, they were 2 pits down from me at Worlds. And there's always just like an instant connection with just anyone that's done first, really, like at any age level or any event. It's really nice. Like even volunteering at events now in the middle of Montana, like somewhere I've haven't been in years, I can just see someone and strike up an instant conversation about some robot designer or some team that we see that has like a cool design. It's a great community to be a part of.
I definitely agree with that. First has an amazing community and a great network. Yeah.
So I have 2 kids. One is 6 and another one is 9. So it's a little bit too early for FTC. In your experience, what can I do right now to help them with both the programming side as well as the soft skills to prepare them for FTC?
Were you guys able to hear the question, or should I repeat it?
I personally never started off with FLL, but I did hear that like it is a good transition to understand like communication skills. So you mentioned like soft skills, But in terms of the programming side, FLL does limit you to some extent with like block programming, and I think recently they introduced Python as well. So you could start off with that. If it's a bit too difficult, then like you could still you like understand like how to work in a group project, like develop those like communication skills. Then in FTC, you would not have a hard time working with a larger group of people. It could be 10 or 15, and you can introduce yourself to like the new software, so like Java, and you're going to learn new things with other people that also join that team. So it's not going to be a big issue if you don't learn software at that young age, but it is really important to understand how to communicate with other people and how to express yourself so that you're not really alone in the huge group in FTC.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I did FLL myself, and just like Rashab said, it really helped me transition to FTC. So that's something your kids can do. All right. So these people are going to be starting their own team. So what is some piece of advice that you'd like to give them about first? Kim, why don't we start off with you?
Ooh, starting your own team. I think as like just an individual member, learning how to like speak up, like I said before, and ask questions, like learn how to, right? Communication is the biggest part of this. Like you learn how to challenge and engage with your team members and try to build connections. It's like a lifelong skill, really. But that's I think is the biggest thing. It's just don't be afraid to ask questions and like just ask for help all the time. It's the best way to start a team and learn.
All right. How about Delaney?
Sorry, I accidentally closed the window. Do you mind repeating the question? Sorry, I was
Yeah.
really distracted by Teams.
Oh, you're good. So what is one piece of advice you'd give for like someone starting a team?
Yeah. One thing that surprised me was like how big and like extensive the first community was. Like as Kim was talking about, like there's that instant connection when you like see someone like out of the blue who did FRC or did first. And I think just kind of leaning into the fact that like people who like are first alumni or like first veterans, chances are they will welcome you with open arms if you like have a question or like have a question about like where to find resources or this, you know, how like technical questions, business questions, operational questions. I think like don't be afraid to make friends with people who are already in the first because chances are they will be overjoyed.
Assuming that like the members that are forming the new team are all rookies and don't know that much about first, I would suggest that like you don't focus on achieving every single award on your first rookie year. If you want to overachieve, I guess you could, but like I would suggest like maybe like focus on understanding the core concepts at first. So it could be both like outreach, understanding like the different other teams in your local area, how they have overcame their rookie year, and what kind of advice they would give you. So like make yourself like your team known to other teams, and they will be like really glad to give you resources in both like mentors. They won't really give you mentors, but like they will give like advice that their mentors gave them in their first year. So that way you can like have a good great start in your first year, and if you have like a good number of members, like maybe if you start out with 5, then like narrow down on like what you want to focus on. But if you have like 10 or 15 people, then if you can like evenly distribute the number of people in your team to like separate tasks, then it would be like a really good first rookie year to have that all solid. So for every other year to come, and yeah.
Awesome. So we're kind of coming towards the end of the time. Do you have any last questions from the audience?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so just one last question before we end things. What do you think are your personal like next steps? And what do you want to do next? Any of you can get started.
Like personal steps in terms of like education, life goals, or like engineering or like things related to first. Like
Oh,
just a little
anything
more
that-
clarification, yeah.
Like what do you want to do after you get out of college?
I'm on a pre-med track, so ideally I would go to medical school afterwards, and then I also would like to start clinics or practice healthcare down in my mother's village, since a lot of people die because they can't afford treatment, or it's like very inaccessible, since it's like a day drive to the next closest town. And I'd like to work more, like get involved with community health with tribes like around Montana and hopefully back in Washington. And yeah, just healthcare on reservations is not ideal. So ideally start my own biomedical engineering research company aimed at like making healthcare and treatments more accessible and affordable, along with opening my own clinics for like I like as like a general practitioner or surgery. That's the goal.
Super, super cool.
One thing I kind of wished for going into college was a little bit more time to go back and mentor Girls of Steel, which is where I kind of got started since I'm back in Pittsburgh. Or just like be at FRC events to volunteer. As of yet, I haven't gotten to do that, but like hopefully like later in my college career, and definitely once like I get out of college. Um, First, I've similar to something Dean Kamen has said, like wanting to give back just as much as you've taken. And like First has offered me so much in terms of like skill, knowledge, experience. And I want to play a part in like making sure students of the future get just as high quality of an experience. Um, Aside from like first related things, um, in terms of career, I don't really know. Uh, but definitely something like electrical and computer engineering related, possibly like, software engineering, since that's like something really prevalent. Um, but yeah, something fun though. Definitely something fun.
Yeah, in terms of first, I'm trying to still stay engaged with like volunteering and like events, and trying to like help out teams. There is a team that like uses the campus like WPI as the main place for them to build and meet up. So I mentored that team every now and then. So my goal is to like as long as I'm like in this college, just helping out teams and staying engaged with first. But outside of first, similar to Delaney, like I don't have that much of an idea of what to do after graduating, but definitely somewhere in the CS field, as that's what I'm trying to major in.
Awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories with us. It's super interesting and cool, and to see who become through first. So thanks for coming, and we'll have about a 10-minute break, and we'll see you back soon. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.